I'm going to start. These are my favorite modules. This is my fun presentation. So my favorite module is using a kid's slide deck for a harvest game. It's more about demos, so I just thought I'd have some fun with the deck. I'm going to start. My name's Jacob Rockowitz. I'm also known as Jake. I like to make your life easier by solving complex problems with a simple, well-thought-out solution. Actually, a good demo at the end. And my goal is just for everyone to walk away with something from this presentation. It might be a module, it might be a process, it might be a thought, just to take something away. It's a small enough group where feel free to ask questions as I'm going through. I'll try to pause at the right time, but if you kind of raise your hand or look at me, I'll stop. I mean, it's hard to show a module because sometimes you can't go through everything, but if someone says, listen, show me the configuration for that, I have no problem switching gears and just diving into the back end. And some modules it's completely worth, and some you get the concept immediately. But I did want to start off with how I find modules. I think that's really important in our ecosystem of tens of thousands of modules, how to get the right one, where to look. And, I think we know most of these, but I'm just going to walk through some of my process of looking at the stats of the modules. I really like looking at people's Composer JSON because that's the manifest of everything that they're installing. So you find little gems hidden in there. And I think the recipe initiatives is going to change how we find modules, and I'll come back to that as we're talking through it. And I do want to just do a shout out to ADRs, Architectural Decision Records, which wasn't going to fit in that little box right there. And this is all about demos, so I'm just going to switch over to the browser. And the first thing I'm going to show you is a site called Module Charts. I found it many years ago. And the big difference, so there's lots of stats on Drupal.org. You can go to a page and it lists out the top 100 modules, but they're the top 100 modules of Drupal 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So you're not necessarily getting the right slice of the community at a specific time. You're getting the overall popularity. And this site lists out the top modules, and they do align mostly with what we see. And they also show you the different version numbers. But it also shows changing in ranking. So they'll say when a module increases in ranking. And the one that I found immediately was number 100 is WebP, which has significantly been gaining in ranking because it's a new way to optimize images. I personally recommend just scrolling through the top 100 modules here and just being familiar with them and knowing what they are. Equally, it shows you I'll show you themes, and we all know what the popular themes are in core. It shows you GenAdmin theme is really taking over the admin space. But I like distributions for finding solutions or the Composer JSON file. And I'm going to look at the top three, Open Social, Firebase, and Thunder. And what you got to do is find their repository, and you get their Composer JSON file, and you can just scroll through it. And I just want to point out, you also get the patches that they need to get their system to work, which gives you some hints of what might be some problems you're going to face. Sometimes, I'll admit, patches are for specific problems that they might run into, and you don't always need to install that many patches. But what I like is you scroll through and you see patterns, like people are using the address module frequently. I like to call out this one little dynamic entity reference one, which I want to be clear, I'm not using. It's not even part of my demo, but I want to just show it. It's a really wild module. It allows you to do entity references, not to one entity type, but multiple entity types. So if you want to mix content and users in an entity reference field, it allows you to do it. It is it creates a really rich database table because it's tracking them. But this example, I didn't even know it existed until I was looking over these modules. And Open Social is a distribution for building social communities and intranet. So it does a very specific thing. It's like root, permissions, access. And then you switch to something like Thunder, and that's a solution for publishing websites. And it really comes out when you look at what they're doing with media. You get a list of all their little media modules they're adding to get media to work. The one that I use, and I'm not doing a demo, but the Media Library Modified allows you to kind of place the media on a node and then tweak the description for just that node, not tweak the main description on the media item, tweak it for that instance. And then you get something in Firebase is just an agency, and they're like, we're going to build the ultimate Drupal CMS starter kit. And they realized they couldn't have one giant Composer file. They were going to break it down, and this is what's happening in the community, into small modules that you install and kind of decide recipes. This is predating recipes. But they have, for example, an editor instance, and if you go over you get their solution for CKEditor. What are the modules they think are really important for improving CKEditor? Especially, I'm going to call out this module, the CKEditor plugin pack, which is gradually rising in the stats very quickly, and I'll explain why in a minute. And lastly, we'll just talk about Drupal CMS. There's lots of demos, but Drupal CMS is, I hope everyone's up to speed on this, is like we're doing a ideal starting solution for Drupal made up of recipes. And the perk of these recipes is that we're going to start seeing just out-of-the-box solutions. For example, Martin's working on events, and you're getting the idea that we're going to use Smart Date, add to calendar. He's using add content by bundle. What's great is this is going to allow us, one, you can use a recipe to start with, but if you're building a site and you're like, I need to build an event, at least you have a starting point to look at really quickly. And along with this, it's really tricky making decisions on what modules to use or how to maintain your site. And Lalabot published an article about, they're managing architectural decision records. These are decisions about how they're going to do things on their site. And I'm going to demo it, but I learned about type tray from their decision to say we're going to, on the add content page, use this module to enhance the user experience. In my own work on schema.org stuff, I have a decisions MD. So one note about architectural decision records is the idea is you have individual files. I find that very hard to maintain. If you're a big team, it makes sense, but for just one module, it's easier to just have a long document that just lists out the decisions. And the goal for me is in 40 minutes, someone could come in, read this, and understand most of the reasoning behind all the code, everything. And then at the very bottom, I take the time to track every module that I'm recommending or using and noting just and since I'm doing schema.org, it's spec for data. If I'm mapping a certain module, like the duration field, to the duration in schema.org, I'm just making a quick note, but then I'll make a brief note of the use case. Use meta tag for providing meta tag support. It's a good way for someone coming onto your team not having to decipher your modules. It just says, hey, this is what we're doing with it. And if there's something special, I make little notes on, why we didn't use a module, XML sitemap. Instead, I'm choosing simple sitemap. So now let's really start talking about modules. So let's start exploring some of my favorite modules. I do want to emphasize that my use cases, I work for a healthcare organization and I'm the maintainer of the schema.org blueprint, so that's my demo. I'm using that environment to demo it, but I'm not showing their content, but the content types are healthcare specific. And I just have to call this out with my selection of modules. I always think about my end users first. I put developers last, meaning the goal is to improve your user's experience. And I don't mind installing modules that are a little more complex as long as it makes it easier for someone to accomplish something. We have to maintain it, we'll maintain it. Selecting, these are my three big, the use case. Does it meet our use case? Is it easy to use? And is it maintainable? The module I called out that, forgot the name of it already, the multiple entity references where you can do multiple content types, that's not necessarily easy to maintain because it's a complex change to your database. You're relying on this whole system for it. Dynamic, yeah, so my memory is shot. With the Project Browser Initiative, they just started to better categorize modules, and this is just pulled from Drupal.org of the categorization for modules. And I'm bolding the ones that I'm going to really talk about: administrative tools, content and experiences, a little bit of developer tools or documentation, some media, and this is site structure. And these are the modules I'm going with. I'm doing a demo, so this is the list, but I'm going to just show you each module. They're all on Drupal.org. Let's do it. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite simple modules. It's the admin dialog module. And this is great documentation because if you scroll down to the screenshots, really shows you what it does. It takes a simple page and mostly confirmation pages where you have to go to a dedicated URL and opens them in a mobile. It makes the UI a little cleaner and simpler. And in a demo, the one that kind of comes to mind is if you need to add a redirect, you can go over to search, redirect URLs, and add a redirect. It just pops into a mobile dialog. It makes it really quick and simple. One module that's worth installing with this is client-side validation so that you don't get popped out of the modal if you don't fill it out. Generally, HTML validation will work, but the client-side validation does it a little nicer. And the UI and UX, we'll go there. Dialog. They have this massive manifest of all the dialogues that you want to open. And you can go in and say, for redirects, you have full control of how you target it. If you want to open it in a modal, or you can open it in that off-campus sidebar, that black bar on the side. For my project, like quarterly, I just kind of want to go through the UI and see if there's little optimizations, but the maintainer's doing a good job of out of the box.
Oh, wait a minute. This new version of the overlay module?
It's not overlay. It's just a dial. You know, I mean, in some ways, but it's not iframes, and it's funny. Good job. I think one thing I'll say is the maintainer is not targeting node edit forms, complex forms. It's just simple. Confirmation is the best one. If you're deleting something, popping it in a modal is the cleaner UX. And then you can exit it quickly. It's a faster experience. Goodbye. Okay. Type tray is getting mentioned a lot, and I just want to make sure everyone's aware of this module. I think it was going to be in Drupal CMS, and what it does is it just takes over the add content page and makes it pretty and nice. And it really makes this is the most important page on your site. It should look the best. This is what all the users are going to. And for my site, I've been playing with, and I'll just emphasize, I took out the extra link, but all the icons are from Font Awesome. They're very easy to get. You just pull down an SVG. The free ones are mostly fine. These are all free icons. It does nice little, you can just bookmark something, put it to the top of the list. And there's this patch that's sitting in the queue that I'm working on. Hopefully it'll get in, just pull the icon into the node edit form. So when someone comes back to the node edit form, they have an icon to represent what they're working on. I think the paragraphs module did a good job of setting the importance of icons when you're working through things. And the last one I want to call out is I just like little things that help out Drupal. There's a moderation sidebar module. And I think it's not even worth showing you the screenshot to just show you what it does. Content. So traditionally, if you were in moderation, you would get a giant form sitting in the middle of your content type to choose the state that you want to change it to. And what the moderation sidebar does is just pushing it off to the side. Tells you the status, and you go right here. And publish, change, archive, delete. Very clean UX stuff. I think we need to start pushing more and more in the community on these patterns that make it a little easier and intuitive. And that's what Jin's doing in a lot of cases, is making things easier. Okay, that's talking about admin. I'm going to switch to experience. And there's two where I kind of broke down, there's enhancements to fields, and then there's real fields that improve how you're collecting data. And these are enhancements to fields. And the two that I find really useful is the existing values autocomplete widget. All it does is gives you autocompletion on certain text fields. And the best example to show that is I will go to a drug. And sometimes it's not useful, but other times, drug. Obviously, the name, pronunciation, proprietary name are unique. But when you go down to drug class and unit, that's hard to get a perfect list going, but you get a nice, simple autocomplete. This is literally, let's see if I can get it to. So people just start entering the same value. It has no extra bandwidth on the site. Like you turn it on, they start typing, it hits the server and checks the values that are on the server. And it's all just in the form display mode. Another one, this saved our project because we were using taxonomy heavily. It makes it possible to just get a large taxonomy with nested terms, it creates a dialog that makes it easy to select it. And at the very bottom, I have a taxonomy for audience. And I want to shout out one thing that's great about this is it's a progressive enhancement. So you have your standard entity reference widget here that you could find terms, or you hit select. Once again, well thought out performance because it's opening a modal dialog. That's when it's loading all this information. And you can go in, search, filter, select a bunch of terms, hit save. fills it back in, go right in. You can cut and paste this into clear. It's a perfect system for taxonomy terms. I'd say if you have more than 100, it's a complete win. And then for site data, this is an amazingly simple module. So we have entity references. So the most classic use case is you're building an event and you want to say, here are the locations where the event is. But how do you deal with the room number? Or how do you deal with some special thing like you need a passkey or some extra piece of data? And what this does is allows you to add an extra piece of data to an entity reference, and you get to decide what that text is for. The use case that I have, if I went to a medical organization, sorry, I'll use my filter. So if I scroll down, I have some members, right? Ringo Starr is a member. Here, go in. I can make him the president. So I'm adding a little extra piece of data. If we want to, let's see if we have a John Howard, John Lennon. Hit save. And it adds it's really well
That's
thought.
specific to that node?
Yep. It's perfect for defining relationships. And what's also brilliant about it is it's simple. It's a string, but then you have full control. So you can make that a text area, a text field, and you can decide how it acts on the reference. So in this case, I'm like appending to the reference, but you could change the title. So let's say you're doing news articles and you want to customize that title for the news article that you're putting on that page in the reference field. Change the title of it.
Can you do that in manage display for
Yep.
the field?
Yeah, full control. I actually don't know. It's either going to be in managed display or on the field instance settings. Okay. This one is custom field. So through D7 person, there was a module called field collections, and this is kind of a replacement for field collections. And it allows you to take a bunch of fields and just set them up. Much simpler than creating dedicated entities like people who use Power Graphs for this. This is just a set of fields. And this is one where if people want me to dive deeper to show some more stuff, I will, but for seeing it in reality, if I go to a recipe and I hit edit, scroll down, and you get to nutrition information, which is just like it's key value pairs with some suffixing. And this is a custom field. So in one field, I'm capturing all this information. You can pretty decent support for descriptions, supports images, entity references. And then if we go back to the data, and I turned on, let me see if JSON API is here. So if I go to JSON API, I mean, this is the data that's stored in the database. It's that simple. There's a nutrition field, key value pairs going right down. I can take 1 second and just, if we take our basic page and say we want to add a field, create a new field. I think this one's worth it because this module needs support and love, so people are going to start using it. So if we say custom field, you're basically able to say, I want a text field, and this is all the fields that are supported, an email address. I'm using it, a good example is for contact information, where you're like, I want the name, phone number, and email address for multiple people. It just creates a simple, lightweight structure. Okay.
But those subfields, those aren't available in Fusion, right? This is basically just like,
I think you can pull the values, but yeah, it's more for,
you're not filtering on a single one.
no. And I haven't really dived too deep because it's more like, yeah, I'm using it for that.
It's lightweight, so it's not like it's a bunch of field API fields inside the field. Not like field collection. It's just
Yeah, exactly. They're not field API. They're properties on the field.
right.
Yeah, it's for specific use cases that make sense.
It's cool.
Yeah. And it's nice to see someone really committing to this. And it's a great maintainer. We'll fix an issue and publish a new release almost instantaneously. It's just moving it forward very fast. But it is a big commitment. All right, so so funny. I'm not doing any demo of layout building, but I am going to talk about CKEditor. So I want to emphasize we're doing experience builder, building complex pages. I am of the mindset that that is very useful for landing pages. Like we need that. We need complex layout. There are a lot of cases where you need to write a blog post or simple document. CKEditor has a lot of functionality to build very rich information. And it's been re-architected to be so flexible. And the CKEditor team, this is one of the most important modules in the community, I think, right now for CKEditor, because the CKEditor team is basically sponsoring this module and taking a bunch of CKEditor plugins and making them available. And they do a good job of documenting it, like key features like block indentation, or find and replace, or fonts, or full screen mode is available. Link attributes, templates, and I'll give you a little demo of some of the cool stuff. Let's do Drupal. Oh, I have the entity auto save module, so I'm discarding the changes. So text transformation I just turned on, and my content editors are very happy, where basically it'll take a half symbol and make it into a symbol, double dashes, you'll get an EM dash. You have full control to do whatever you want. You can do regexes, replacement patterns for anything to make it easier for your writers to do. They provide out-of-the-box smart quotes. It's a really well thought out and simple solution. I also like the template system, which is here, where you can just define little templates. These are just little entities of HTML snippets with an icon and say, I want to insert a quote. And it gives people a starting point. And it's done very just HTML. So a developer has to kind of know what they're doing, but it makes it very easy to just add that. I turned on a couple of the other ones of the highlight, but depends on the site you're working on, word count. What's nice is it's one catch-all place for all these features. They even have their basic, this is basic proofreading. You know what I have to do on my own stuff? Let's give this a second. Kill. Oh, that's through the session. This will do it as you're typing if you make a misspelling. Browsers support this, but this makes it a little cleaner. Try to think of the name. Page breaks. Everyone should be installing this module, basically, to start your CKEditor. There's at least one or two features you're going to want. Another one I like is the link styles. It just allows you to add CSS classes to links, making it very easy to learn more. Sorry, my time is punched over. You just get to drop a little button in. It's really, I don't need it to be small. Boom. Really simple. I see lots of complex, if you're doing this in paragraphs or Mercury editor, you got to create a link field, enable link attributes, and this just makes it easy for an editor just to drop a CT. So it's another one. It's a great example where you can make building an accordion really complex, or you could use the CKEditor details element, which adds accordions. And Martin, who's presenting the other room, did it. I really appreciate this because you can just go in and say, I would like to add an accordion. You say, learn more. Some more. And then if you want, well, see, this is just a show more widget, but if you hit below, you can add another accordion and stack it. This is standard HTML. Quick and simple for someone to build, out of the box, easy to style, accessible, friendly. You don't have to make things overly complex. I really like this one because I've nudged the maintainer for it, and I'll show you a demo. So it's the idea that you can have instead of a template, like a predefined widget that opens a dialog that someone fills out and then it drops in a presentation, kind of like an SDC. And that's what my demo is going to show is, so I have this little quote thing, but maybe it's not the right markup. Pull this out. Go in, you get a little dialog, say, what embedded content do I want? I want a quotation. Jake. And it'll drop And this, it's a plugin based system. It's basically like blocks that you can embed in CKEditor. And this block is mapped to an SDC with SEO on top of it in schema.org. And I see this pattern. This is going to be an opportunity for SDCs where we're going to get little dialogues that we could drop in. It needs a lot of work. I mean, for the geeks in us, it's one of the challenges is this ain't so easy to translate. So we got to, and frankly, I mean, if we're talking SDCs here, what it needs to do is render underneath the hood. It probably needs to render some markup, like some tags, like the properties wrapped in, the properties could be attributes and then the strings could be slots. But still, if it could be, you could just pick your SDCs that you want to drop in CKEditor. There's a lot that, there's 10 patterns that are totally worth it. Quotes, especially highlights, special bulleted lists where you need a lot of styling. And the last nicety that I like in CKEditor is, listen, sometimes you got to go edit the source. And it's crazy to show someone an unstyled text field. And you turn on the CKEditor code mirror integration, you get this experience. And they don't have enough. And it just has collapsing, color coding. Just works. I kind of do it on all my sites because it just feels like the right way. You want a fully featured CKEditor. So okay. So I'm going to switch to documentation. I find this module fascinating. It's not used on a lot of sites. It's on 149 sites. They're going, and these diagrams are worth showing because these are their examples of, it does entity relationship diagrams and workflow diagrams, and it's trying to just help document a site. If you're building a large site, you want to know what's going on underneath the hood. And the example I can even start here is in my site, and I have in the blueprints module, I have an enhancement module that what it's doing is it generates a content type with a description, adds documentation for every content type as it's created. So I have this read documentation that opens a modal, and this modal is that content model documentation. They have an entity called content documentation, and you can document every single entity type, field, keep track of it, and I just threw a template in there. And it nudges better documentation of the site. And this is one aspect of it. They're covering a lot of other things because you can go into the reports and get just a chart on your content usage, your stats, what's unpublished, what content types aren't being used that much. And then they're doing entity relationship diagrams, and this is a tricky one because this will be a fail, but I'll show you why. In this architecture that I have, there's a lot going on. There's so many relationships this becomes unusable because it's every content type could have a page attached to it as part of a page, so it's showing those relationships. But what was cool about this is doing something pretty cool. It's generating a chart dynamically, and it introduced me to Mermaid, which is a kind of a YAML-based syntax for building diagrams. And started reading this, and I was like, okay, it starts to make sense. The documentation is very good. This is an example of just how you do a relationship. And I was like, well, maybe I can build my own reports because I have a specific use case. And I pulled out some of their code, and this is an entity. Basically, it's an entity relationship diagram inspired by what they did, but I'm only highlighting key relationships. It's not every single entity reference field. And the SVG pan zoom lets you zoom in and out. And if I go down here and I say I want to look at people, you do get a clean diagram because you start slicing your site up and say, I want to look at people. They work for a clinic, they're employed by a clinic, or the person you track for works for, and they have a role. The role, by the way, schema, that extra text field is a role. It's like the extra piece of data to start that relationship. And to shout out to Mermaid.js, it's just, and I got to emphasize that YAML syntax is fully supported by GitLab. I'm almost certain GitLab and GitHub, where you can put this in your README file and just mark it as Mermaid, and it'll render diagrams. It's not a module, but this code is
But it's
Content model documentation.
content model documentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can ping me. I tried to upload my slides, but that wasn't possible. So, yeah, if you want me to, any module you want me to go back to, I'll end on that screen. I think that's a good idea. So honestly, I think our favorite modules are the modules we're working on. We're very obsessed with them. So I'm going to show a module that I've been working on this past week, and I had a lot of frustration for years with the node, and I'll describe it, and then people know exactly what I'm talking about. When you get to a node edit form and you've installed translation, couple that on, devel, search API, you get this long list of tasks. And on my old site, we're up to like 12 different tasks, because then we need more information about the node, the usage, the clone, the delete. And it gets out of hand. And that, similar to the add node page, those buttons to edit content are some of the most important pieces of information. That's what everyone clicks on. And I really got sick of looking at it. So I built this little more widget to only show the first 5 tasks.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to really brag, because there's one challenge here is, and I'll point it out. Okay, I'm doing that on a front end theme, but then you got to do it on the back end theme and figure out how do you write it in a way that just works across any theme. So, and I want to show it in action is like, yeah, and there are a lot, by the way, the project page, I don't spend a lot of time on project pages, but I'm listing out a lot of modules. There's a bunch of other modules that do try to tame these tasks, and a lot of them will override them and like float them on the side or put icons next to them. I was just trying to fix the most immediate problem is just too many tasks, and since it's my new module, I'll just start. It shows the first 5. You have full control over the number and the threshold, meaning like generally we're targeting 5, but if there's 7 tasks, I don't really need to show more. We'll show 7 tasks if it's like +2. And you can go in and say, I want to look at the usage. And it works on the front end and back end theme, because all it's doing is adding a little button. It actually is using back end rendering, so we know exactly it's generating the right CSS, and then just using a little JavaScript to toggle and save the state of it. The admin, give me 1 second, UI. For now, it only targets the node route, but you can target any. And you can do little, if you really want to tame it, sometimes you want to shorten some of the local tasks or delete them. For example, because I'm using the JIT admin theme, I'm just taking the delete task out of the node tabs, because it doesn't make sense. It's not necessary. JIT makes it very easy to go to an admin node edit form and click the delete button. Generally, most people don't want to delete content. And yeah, at the bottom is the thresholds, where it supports secondary tasks too. Okay. How many times? It's good. So I don't know. I'm open to questions. I can go back. People can throw out modules that they thought of while I was talking. I'm open to almost anything. Thanks for listening. Happy
Can you
Thanksgiving.
leave it on the screen where you have the entire?
Yep. Yeah, and if you want to pick my brain, there's enough people in the room where you could say, I'm looking for a module to do something, and someone's going to suggest.
Okay, I'm looking for a module on an entity reference field that makes it so it doesn't show the node number
When you're selecting it,
you select.
I'm a big fan of Content Browser. Have you seen it? Like, I actually did a lot of work on it recently. Not Content Browser. I gotta phrase that correct. Nothing personal about a module, but don't install the Content Browser module. Install the Entity Browser module, which then you just have to configure right. And let me see if I can get to one. Edit.
Use case is customer facing entity reference autocomplete field. So they're searching in this case for a clinic.
Well, the autocomplete entity references must have the ID when it's hitting save. Haven't seen anyone, because you can't really do it off the string because you have things with multiple title. This just replaces the whole system and opens a modal, and you have full control over this.
Okay.
So this is views. Autocomplete is tricky, but you can add autocomplete to these, and it just gives you a quick select. And the other one
And it has to be a pop-up or
yeah, unless I'm open to suggestions. I, off the top of my head, don't have one that makes it. That ID is really important. It's really
I
frustrating.
know.
It's
But when it's customer facing, it's
yeah. Any other questions?
I'll mention one other, because I really like the new navigation module before, the experimental one. except for the fact that you can't flush caches and that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a little self-serving because I'm one of the maintainers, but I really didn't write the module. But there's a module navigation extra tools that adds a new option to that menu to run cron, flush cache. We got that one right there. Yeah. So James, one of my alumni, added that. So
Yeah, I did some work on it. I'm trying to get navigation module working. It's a little challenging. It's experimental and needs some nuance
I
change.
really like it. I really like it.
I like it.
I like the fact it's in core, so I don't have that admin toolbar anymore, and it's very slick. And but for me, this navigation extra tools kind of completes it for me.
Yeah, no, and there's a bunch of environment that all the little add-ons to the toolbar module, like toolbar, are being moved over to navigation, like the environment indicators, trying to sort out how to get the color record. You have to install 2 patches to get it to work.
We'll get there. It's not.
Yeah, no, basically I did it, and I was like, I'm gonna come back with Mike, if I was gonna give a pet peeve. The flush, so if you have a page like, if you have sub-items, the main item's not clickable.
Right.
And that's a painful one, like, cause
Yeah.
the paragraphs you go to, it only shows you add paragraph type, you can't see click to all the paragraphs.
Right.
I haven't found the ticket that they're gonna try to figure that out.
Yeah. So I'm with you.
Alright, I'll wrap up early.
All confirmation forms be mobile.
I 100% think that.
Take that into the report.
Can all confirmation forms be modals? Should, yes. I 100% believe that. And in web form, I took it even a step further because of UX call. And like, if it's destructive, like really bad, like in web forms, if someone's deleting a web form, you could lose data. So I have a checkbox it's like, are you sure you want to do this? Like an extra layer. And it just adds a little checkbox for it. So you open up a modal, you say, do you want to delete this? And then they have to double confirm it, besides clicking the delete button. I think it's the right approach in Drupal. We need to distinguish when different types of confirmation. Some are simple and some are not. They could destroy your site. Or just you're losing data. That's one of the.
There's a very old issue to improve the design for highly destructive confirmation forms.
Yeah. And I don't know if we're using any modals I don't think we're using any modals for confirmation forms. I'm all, and the problem is I'm using this module that takes over that whole space, so I don't know what's a modal or what's not, what's being done by that module or not.
For the admin dialog, is it customizable so you can select which area you should take over, or does it all?
No, you can turn it off if you want it for a certain feature, and the maintainer did a really good job of how the admin dialog, I'm going to repeat the question, how does the admin dialog module work? It's super flexible in selecting, because it's like, sometimes you can say per route, I want, if someone ever displays this route in Drupal, I want to open a modal dialog. Or you can even do it in jQuery, because it's a little tricky. Sometimes it's just like a link, and it's really hard to hook into it. So it has full flexibility. I think they did a great job of just solving the problem.
So even when you're on the front end, for admin area, it'll do modal while displaying in front and B.
Yep. And that's one of the Drupal challenges. You have to have modals working in the front end engagement. And you have to accept that jQuery modals are side. jQuery modals are being displayed in the front end until we replace that. All right, thank you.